Hello again and welcome to the program. I am Suren. I discovered, like many of others, a number of people asking inquisitively about what if Earth and all life on it is an experiment by some advanced aliens. The idea that Earth and all life on it could be an experiment conducted by advanced aliens is a fascinating concept and is explored in science fiction, as well as some philosophical discussions. They indeed sound exciting and certainly making one want to know the reality, though it may be hard to take sometimes and could present philosophical and logical challenges. And here are some considerations around this hypothesis. To start, let us consider philosophical implications. 1. Existential questions. If we are part of an experiment, it raises questions about purpose and meaning. Are our lives really significant, or are they merely data points in a grand experiment? 2. Free will versus determinism. This scenario challenges our understanding of free will. If our actions are being observed or even manipulated, to what extent are we truly free? When you think about it, are we really free? Let us look at some simple scientific considerations now. 1. Is there any evidence and testability for this hypothesis to be taken seriously in scientific context? That would most definitely need to be empirical evidence or a way to examine it. Currently, what we know is that there is no direct evidence to support the idea of Earth as being an alien experiment. 2. Complexity of life. The complexity and diversity of life on Earth, as well as the intricate ecosystems, suggest that if we were an experiment, it would require immense knowledge and resources on the part of the alien civilization, and we do not know the existence of any such advanced civilization elsewhere. Furthermore, when we consider the cultural reflections, we are going to encounter further challenges. 1. Consider mythology and religion. Many cultures have myths and religious texts that imply a creator or a higher power influencing the life on Earth. This concept certainly resonates with those beliefs. 2. Literature and media. Works like The Matrix or The Truman Show and various science fiction novels explore similar themes, naturally prompting audiences to question what reality and control might be or are. Now one feels like questioning the potential outcomes of the experiment, if it at all exists. 1. Observation of progress. If aliens are observing us, they might be interested in how societies develop, how technology evolves, or how moral and ethical frameworks are established on planet Earth. 2. Intervention versus non-intervention. Would these aliens intervene in human affairs, or would they allow us to develop independently? This could obviously impact the outcomes of the experiment. At the end, while the idea of Earth as an alien experiment is only speculative and lacks an empirical support, it serves as a rich ground for philosophical, scientific, and even cultural exploration. It can prompt us to reflect on our existence, the nature of reality, and potentials for life beyond the Earth. It is often asked, particularly by those who tend to observe the anomalies and lifestyles of people, is all life on Earth part of an alien experiment? Consider technological artifacts. Discovering advanced technology or artifacts that cannot be explained by human civilization indicates an alien presence. Do we have so far any evidence thereof? Biological anomalies could provide us with the evidence of genetic manipulation, or certain features in organisms could also suggest artificial intervention. Let's look at the observational data. Unexplained phenomena, consistent and various viable reports of unexplained events or phenomenon that cannot be accounted for by natural laws. Patterns of behavior. Observations that indicate interference or manipulation in human characteristics or social development. Communicational evidence. Direct contact, clear and unambiguous communication from extraterrestrial beings, either through signals or direct interaction. SETI is certainly on the watch out. Are there perhaps encoded messages which we need to be aware of? Discovery of patterns or messages in natural phenomenon that may suggest intelligent design or communication. Closest so far, as we discover, can be the crop circles. That is, if they are not produced as hoaxes. What about the historical records? Ancient texts, or as we can describe as the historical documents, or artifacts that describe encounters with advanced beings or technologies that align with modern understandings of alien life. Consistent myths or similarities in an ancient myth across different cultures that reference advanced beings or creators. As for example, the ancient Mesopotamian and Sumerian texts. Let us also consider scientific experiments. Controlled studies as well as the experiments designed to test for alien influence, such as observing changes in behavior of evolution under specific conditions that could mimic experimental scenarios. Longitudinal studies, research over a long period of time to identify any unusual patterns in human development or social changes that may suggest external influence. Another question creeps in. is there any astrobiological evidence? Life beyond Earth, discovery of life forms on other planets or moons that can show similarities to Earth life, suggesting a shared origin or experimental lineage. Probably we are very close in discovering this. However, we are not there yet. Performing science, evidence that celestial bodies have been altered to support life, indicating advanced technology capable of such changes. In conclusion, we can claim that the alien experiment theory is most certainly intriguing, but it remains very speculative without substantial evidence. We can almost conclude that a combination of the types of evidence listed would be necessary to build a credible case for this hypothesis. We therefore need to ask what specific biological anomalies would suggest artificial intervention. Can genetic modifications be the answer? Explained or unexplained genetic features. Organisms exhibiting traits that cannot be explained by natural evolution, such as unusual resistance to disease or extreme environmental conditions. Humanic organisms, species that contain genetic material that multiple organisms leading to hybrid features not normally found in nature. Are there any rapid evolutionary changes? Accelerated adaptation or sudden burst of evolutionary change in a species within relatively short time frame could suggest manipulation of selective breeding. Convergence of traits, different species developing similar traits simultaneously due to external influence rather than common ancestry. That certainly would be extraordinarily exciting to discover, wouldn't you say? Irregular genetic codes is another issue we may need to look for. For instance, the code anomalies, discovering sequences in DNA that appear artificially constructed or include non-natural elements. That would be possibly indicating some form of engineering. We can even take note of redundant genes. In other words, the presence of multiple copies of the same gene with no apparent evolutionary advantage. When it comes to symbiotic relationships, imagine now the existence of unusual symbiosis, instances where two or more organisms form a relationship that is highly complex and unlikely to occur naturally, suggesting intentional design. What about the other issues, such as the dependency on technology? Organisms that require artificial technology or structures to survive, which would not exist in their natural environment. What about the unusual morphological traits? Extreme variability. Organisms with an unusual range of physical forms or features that do not align with evolutionary reproduction systems. Structural abnormalities, features that appear to be designed for specific purposes, such as bioluminescence or complex organ systems, not typically found in nature. Consider also the patterns of distribution. Geographic anomalies, species distributed in a way that does not align with natural migration patterns, suggesting deliberate placement or introduction. Isolation of traits, traits appearing in isolated populations without a clear evolutionary pathway, indicating potential artificial selection. Imagine people using their fingers or fingertips to look at things. Behavioral anomalies, unnatural intelligence. Animals, for instance, displaying advanced problems or problem-solving abilities or social structures that seem to be extraordinarily complex for their evolutionary background. Response to environmental changes. Organisms that exhibit sudden behavioral changes in response to stimuli not typically present in their natural habitat. Finally, these biological anomalies could indicate artificial intervention if they are found in conjunction with other supporting evidence. While many of these traits can also arise through natural processes, their combination and context could suggest a different origin. And so, what evidence do we need to support the alien experiment theory? Obviously, we will be searching for empirical evidence. Artifacts or technology, discovering advanced technology or artifacts that are clearly extraterrestrial in origin, perhaps buried or hidden, would be compelling. Biological anomalies, finding organisms or genetic material that cannot be explained by natural evolution, suggesting manipulation or engineering by an advanced intelligence. Now let's come down to Earth and consider the observational data. Unexplained anomalies or patterns in natural phenomena, or the human behavior that cannot be accounted for by known scientific principles, might indicate external influence. Imagine a man being able to fly at will. Statistical irregularities, significant deviations from expected patterns in biodiversity, evolution, or climate could suggest manipulation. Communicational evidence, signals from space, detecting signals or communications that can be traced back to intelligent sources, particularly if they indicate interest in Earth. Messages or codes, finding encoded messages within natural phenomena or biological processes that imply intentional design. Historical context, ancient texts and artifacts, historical records or artifacts that suggest contact with extraterrestrial beings, or that depict advanced knowledge not typical for the time. Mythological correlations, with consistent themes across various cultures about creation or influence from beings not of this earth. Scientific validation and the peer-reviewed studies, research that explores enormous data or phenomena that points towards extraterrestrial influence, published in credible scientific journals. Interdisciplinary collaboration, collaborative studies across various scientific fields, such as biology, anthropology, astronomy, that point to a common conclusion about alien intervention. Technological monitoring, surveillance of anomalies, utilizing advanced monitoring technologies to detect unexplained phenomena or events that could indicate external experimentation. Behavioral analysis. If the studies that would show unusual patterns in human development, culture, or technology that suggest guidance or intervention. At the end, while the idea remains speculative, gathering compelling evidence across these categories could strengthen the argument for Earth being an alien experiment. However, significant skepticism and regular scientific scrutiny would be essential in interpreting any findings. What implications would this theory have for our understanding of consciousness? That's a good question. Let's consider briefly the nature of consciousness. Artificial versus natural. If consciousness is part of an experiment, it raises more questions about whether our consciousness is a naturally evolved trait or artificially induced state. This could lead to debates about the authenticity of the human experience. Emergence versus design. It might suggest that consciousness could be either an experiment or emergent property of complex systems or a design feature, prompting further inquiry into what consciousness might be or truly is. Now comes the subject of free will and agency. Let's remain with the subject of determinism for a brief moment. If our lives are being observed as part of an experiment, it may imply a deterministic framework where our choices are influenced or predetermined by external factors, like, for example, our supposed fate or destiny, as some religions declare. We can then consider the illusion of free will. This could in fact challenge the notion of free will, leading to discussions about whether our thoughts and actions are genuinely our own or manipulated by the experiments and the experimenters. What about collective consciousness? Shared experience. If we are part of a larger experiment, it could suggest a collective consciousness where individuals' experiences contribute to a broader understanding of human behavior and thought. Communication with the experimenters. There might be implications for how consciousness could bridge communication between humans and advanced beings, potentially allowing for shared experience or even insights. ethical considerations, moral responsibility. If consciousness is part of an experiment, it raises questions about moral responsibility for our own actions. Are we then accountable for our behavior if we are being observed or, shall we say, manipulated? Value of life. The idea that life is an experiment might affect how we value existence, prompting every evaluation of ethical framework concerning life and consciousness. Some of ancient religious thought is based upon this notion. Implications for artificial intelligence. Creating consciousness. Understanding consciousness is, in the context of an experiment, could influence how we approach artificial intelligence, raising more questions about the potential for creating conscious machines. Testing and examining consciousness. If consciousness is a construct, we might explore methods to test or replicate it in AI, potentially leading to breakthroughs in technology. And so, in general, this theory invites deep philosophical and scientific inquiries into the nature of consciousness, free will, and ethical considerations surrounding life. It challenges us to rethink our understanding of what it means to be conscious and how that consciousness interacts with the universe. And so, how could we detect if our consciousness is artificially induced? Neuroscientific studies show us that brain activity monitoring, like advanced neuroimaging techniques such as fMRI or EEG, could help identify patterns of brain activity associated with consciousness. Anomalies or patterns inconsistent with natural consciousness could indicate external manipulation. Neurochemical analysis. Studying the brain's neurochemistry might reveal unusual levels of neurotransmitters or other chemicals that could suggest artificial enhancement or induction of consciousness. Behavioral observations. Consistency of experience. Analyzing the consistency and coherence of individual experiences over time could provide insights. Significant disjunctions might suggest external influence. Response to stimuli. Examining how individuals respond to various stimuli, especially unexpected or novel situations, could indicate whether responses are genuinely spontaneous or artificially conditioned. Philosophical inquiry. Thought experimentation. Engaging in philosophical thought experiments like those proposed by Descartes or more modern scenarios can help explore the nature of consciousness and subjective experiences. Turing test, if you're familiar with variance, modifying the Turing test to evaluate if an entity can exhibit human-like consciousness could help assess the authenticity of conscious experiences. Technological detection. Monitoring external influences, developing technology to detect external signals or manipulations, like electromagnetic fields or neural interfacing, could provide insights into possible artificial induction. AI and creating AI models that mimic human consciousness could help establish benchmarks for what constitutes genuine versus artificially induced consciousness. Comparative analysis. Cross-species comparisons. Studying consciousness in various species could help identify unique characteristics of human consciousness. Deviations from these couldn't provide an artificial induction. Cultural and temporal changes. Analyzing how consciousness has evolved across cultures and time can provide context for detecting abrupt changes that may suggest external influence. Experiential reflection. All states of consciousness. Exploring altered states through meditation, psychedelics, etc., might reveal aspects of consciousness that differentiate genuine experience from artificial manipulation. Phenomenological analysis. Engaging in subjective reporting and introspection to understand the qualitative aspects of consciousness could help identify inconsistencies. And finally, while detecting artificially induced consciousness is complex and may not yield definitive answers, a combination of scientific, philosophical, and experiential approaches can provide valuable insights. Ultimately, the challenge lies in defining what constitutes authentic consciousness and developing the means to evaluate it effectively. I shall stop this episode here. Hopefully we have not been on it for too long. We will meet you again by the next episode. Until then, be happy, smile often, and thank you.